But firstly, I wanted to say a huge thank you for a really beautiful performance. It's really great to have you here at the Counts. How did it feel back on stage, your first gig after this long lockdown?
Really nice. A bit nerve-wracking, but really nice. It felt like just slipping into something really comfortable. We're old friends and these are some of our favourite songs. It was a bit like, oh, gosh, I have to remember the words in French again and just turn on that part of my brain. Sort of a little bit of realisation as we started the songs, but we got there. You guys remembered the chords too, so yeah, it all comes back.
Work.
It's like riding a bike.
Beautiful work. So you've performed at festivals such as Adelaide French Festival and Bastille Day, but you've also performed for the French Ambassador and the Consulate General. What was that experience like?
It's very nerve-wracking to sing. It's easier to sing at a festival than it is to sing for important French people because, you have to know your Marseillaise 100%, the national anthem and the unofficial anthem like a Piaf song or Champs-Élysées. So it's a real honour. We have a really good relationship with a lot of French speakers and the Alliance and different French bodies in Melbourne, and it's been a pleasure to be able to, represent them a few times and sing for things. Yeah.
We've had a question from Edith who asks, how do you retain your connection to this music during a time when you can't travel and the world seems very distant?
That's such a good question. It's been a really long time now since I've been to France in the scheme of my life. I probably went every 2 years since I was 16, worked really hard to be able to go and spent a lot of time practicing. So it has been weird not being able to travel for even longer before that. I've got a little one at home, so, travel hadn't been on the cards for a while. I immersed myself in French film and French television over this time, and French music as well, but particularly I reckon, SBS is incredible for bringing the world to us. And so there was a lot of daydreaming and just trying to travel, armchair style, I think. Yeah.
So you've performed for companies as well, such as Lancôme, Bulgari, Gucci, Paspaley Pearls. It sounds super glamorous. You've had a residency at Entrecôte. You've performed for champagne houses such as Moet and for the famous chef Guillaume Brahimi. So I'm getting the sense here that you're all a bunch of foodies and wine lovers. So what I want to know is what a La Nuit Blanche rehearsal looks like, and can I come and who cooks?
Oh, well, yeah. We've always had a great time at rehearsal. It's actually where we got the name of the band because the name La Nuit Blanche, of course, it means the white night. But just as the festival is called that in Europe, to have a white night means to have an all-nighter. And I got the phrase from my father-in-law who speaks French and was helping me riff on some things. And we were kind of like, well, we end up kind of getting together and drinking and eating and having really late nights. So it kind of ended up being a great name. But Salvatore has cooked for us and Enzo cooks for us and we drink a lot of red wine, basically. And
I need to get Salvatore to pick up the mic.
Because it was winter, of course. We drink something else in the summertime. I reckon that Chelsea wants you to grab onto the microphone just in case anyone wants to chat to you, Sal.
I want to know what your signature dish is, Sal.
Basically.
Signature dish?
Sorry?
Signature dish. What's a good meal that you make?
At that time, we would do the bolognese sauce, I think.
You would make a good bolognese.
Sauce, yes.
But you make a good tuna pasta.
I just love to cook. Yeah, I do different dishes.
You make a good tuna pasta as well?
Yes, yes. Tuna is my specialty.
Okay, I think the after party of the after parties at Sal's place.
No more questions.
No more questions. Not divulging any secret recipes. We had a question from Ruth who just wants to know how these four friends united over the passion for French music. How did you meet and get together?
To start at, I suppose, the beginning, Salvatore and Enzo have known each other for, 25 plus years? 25 years or 40 years? They came over from the same part of Italy together a long time ago, and obviously these guys played European music, and we kind of met collaboratively on the scene. I studied jazz, but I've always had a passion for French stuff, having studied that as well. And we'd played some other, I think, jazz together, and it was an aim to maybe chuck maybe three French songs in a repertoire at the end of the year and see how I go and see if I could learn them. And it kind of ended up turning into a whole set list, and then 2 set lists, and then 4 set lists worth of French stuff. And when we needed a European-inspired guitar player, well, Nathan, you know, is a absolute flamenco master and Spanish influence, and it was kind of cool to be able to bring that rather than just like a straight kind of Django gypsy jazz thing into the mix as well, because people do that and they do it amazingly. So we kind of just tried to bring our own sound.
Yeah, I know we've talked about that before, that this is your Melbourne take on the Francophone repertoire, and the introduction of flamenco guitar gives it that little bit of a different spin. Nathan, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how you approach the repertoire? And what is that kind of gypsy relationship with some of that material?
Yeah, so, well, I suppose I've studied a lot of different things. I've spent a lot of time playing with dancers in particular, so flamenco dancers and tango dancers. And I've also sort of have a love of Brazilian music and jazz. And I suppose the way that I think about playing any of those things is from a place of, you know, I guess in the simplest way, like some people learn a style and they really try and master a particular style and learn about the tradition and learn about and play in a very pure kind of way. And I've always found...
Just approach it with musicality, no matter what the song
and I just try and combine... and so it's always the same thing. So it doesn't matter really if I'm playing tango music or French music or flamenco. I just try and... it's not authentic in any of those things. So
it's authentically you.
That's why it's the Melbourne take,
Yeah.
Melbourne influence, which I really love that. So I know that the ensemble, you've performed a lot at jazz clubs around town, such as Paris Cat, and you released a live album, Live at Paris Cat, which you can check out via Bandcamp. Check it out online. Is there any plans for any future recordings, studio albums?
Maybe. We kind of, a year ago, we were really looking forward to a couple of big kind of headlining shows this year, and the aim was to have a couple of original French language tunes in there, and obviously life hit in the last 18 months. So yeah, I think in the next year we're going to kind of do a little bit of a refresh of the repertoire that we want to play, and look a little bit kind of further afield, because we've got the traditional thing down, but it is fun to keep finding kind of new French songs that you can do differently. I have a bit of a thirst for that and expanding our collection, and then maybe add a couple of original French language songs to the mix. On ne sait pas, we'll have to see.
Riley, you are one of the most versatile vocalists that I know. I've seen you perform in so many different combinations. I know you perform with, can I call them country soul outfit fools?
Americana,
who are performing at Blues Festival next year. You also work with Cooking on Three Burners. You have your Dusty Springfield show, the Amy Winehouse show. So many different things. You're also a mum. This might be a selfish question from me, who's also a kind of new parent. How do you continue to still pursue your music while juggling parenthood, work, all of the things?
Well,
and that's a question for everyone in the band here, by the way.
Absolutely.
Any parents out there?
Nathan's also a dad of a young girl as well. It can be really hard. I think that the main thing for me from quite early on was if I was going to be away from my daughter for any kind of work, it was work that I wanted to, it either has to, bring me, it has to be fulfilling in one way or another. So it either has to be financially rewarding, or it has to be meaningful to me as well. So that helped me sort of like separate the stuff that I really wanted to do and that was meaningful for me, and the things that maybe I could say no to, because the thing that I suppose you learn as well is that there's gigs enough for everyone, and it's much better to kind of like form a community of amazing singers and musicians than try and be gigging every single night of the week for things that you don't want to do because you're not sure where your place is. So there's a lot of juggling. There's a lot of, trying to work out your priorities. Something always falls off, of course, because that's what life and parenting is about. But for me, it was about making the most meaningful choices and trying to leave, I suppose, my main thing over the next years will be trying to leave, like a legacy of like good musical work. That's why I worked while my daughter was little as well, because it was meaningful.
Yeah, beautifully said. So speaking of advice, something I've been asking all of the artists performing here at the Counts over the last little while is any advice that any of you might have for any emerging artists and students who are currently studying at Monash that might be looking at moving into the music industry, because it's been a really tough time. So if you've got any
I studied at
wisdom to
Monash
share.
and I'm in the music industry, so
Woo!
that's quite nice to be back. And I teach at a tertiary level as well at another fantastic institution, so I'm happy to chat about this question as well, because I feel like over the last 2 years, whether they've been in late high school or university, gosh, students have had the opportunity to dig into technology in a way that we never either knew was possible, had the time for, had the skills for, had the internet for. And if you were unencumbered with either no job or no kids to look after, all that kind of stuff, this has been an amazing time to get creative, or at least kind of learn and get your hand across like so much technology. So there are gigs again, that's already been proven. There's support from government and also other art bodies. We've seen that start to happen again. So I feel like it's actually a really good time to be throwing yourself into the music industry. You still, I feel, need to be versatile, at least maybe for your formative years, because that's how you learn what you're good at, and that's how you diversify enough to be able to make a living out of it. But I feel like it is coming to be a positive time to enter the industry, whether it's as a performer or it's as a producer or as an arts presenter or something as well. It's an exciting time. It's a renaissance, I think.
I love that. It's a renaissance. Did you all catch
Renaissance,
that?
it's a French word after all.
And we are in the roaring 20s yet again, right?
Yeah.
So if you think back on history, if history's repeating, this whole next decade, once this COVID thing's done, it's going to be all sequins, diamantes, and a whole lot of champagne.
I'm there for that.
And those fabulous cocktails, 1920s cocktails, that's what I'm predicting, and great jazz. I've got one more question, and then we'll be wrapping up our live stream. But for those in the crowd, the party is just getting started after this. So we're going to have a break, grab a wine, and hear some more music just for you from Nuit Blanche. But our last question, I was just wondering, for those who might not be so across French culture, this might have been the first time that they've heard music like this before. Do each of you have any recommendation on a book, a film, or an artist, francophone, that you think is essential?
Do you want to go first? No more questions.
Yeah, we
You
got
don't
that
wanna
memo,
talk.
didn't we?
Nathan,
In terms of French music,
Yeah.
I would say, well, as a guitarist, I'd say Borelli Legrin, obviously Django Reinhardt, and to get a little bit of like the gypsy jazz kind of feel. There's a director called Tony Gatliff, who's done a amazing series of movies, but they're almost documentaries on gypsy kind of life. And the one on French gypsy music is called Swing, and that's an amazing movie. And I think that would give you a good sense of the history of where it sort of comes from.
Brilliant.
I'm going to watch that too. Gosh. Look, there's so many. I think that in terms of French art, films and music, films and TV, they have such a way of looking at the world, and particularly quirks. Amelie was a really good example of that. But, in terms of television, Call My Agent was an amazing hit.
It was like my favourite lockdown
So
binge
good. And,
Netflix.
there's so many good French movies in the last few years. C'est la vie, which is an excellent kind of romp at a wedding that just goes completely wrong. It's got a really good soundtrack. You go back and watch like a Truffaut movie, or something that is on my list actually to watch is The Talented Mr. Ripley was actually a French film from the 60s first. I can't remember the name of it, but, imagine that movie was originally done in the 60s and in French. Like, it's just absolutely perfect. But, I tuck Spotify on and I just kind of listen to anything French from Catastrophe, which is like a disco kind of French group, to even Daft Punk, and then Camille, and I'm talking obviously Francophone because they're Belgian, and then go and school yourself on Charles Aznavour and the holy trinity of chansonnier, which was Brassens and Serge Gainsbourg and the other one
I should have written this down.
Jacques
I just
Brel
distribute
as
the
well.
list.
Yeah, well, I guess it'll be on the stream, but the holy trinity of the chanson writers is always a good place to start with French song as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And thanks again for an incredible first set. And that concludes our Live at the Counts stream. Thank you for joining our Live at the Counts concert series. We'd like to say thank you to Monash University Performing Arts Centre's technical crew and staff for their incredible work. For information on future shows and more extraordinary live performances, follow @Monash PAC.